Ruth is a local artisan who specializes in basket making. She makes baskets in traditional and non-traditional material. When Ruth is not designing baskets, you can find her as the owner and operator of the local League of NH Craftsmen store in downtown Nashua.
I always liked baskets, and I thought it would be fun to learn how to make them, so I got a book in 1991, and I made some baskets from it. Then I took a class, and I was hooked. I always tell my students, if you start dreaming about baskets, then you're hooked, and that's what happened to me. I would dream about baskets. I wished I could remember the patterns that I came with while I was dreaming, but and then I started teaching about, maybe 20 years ago. And I really like basket making. You take really a mess. It's a mess of different sizes and shapes and colors, and then you create something that's neat and tidy with a beautiful form. And basket making to me is a lot about color and form, the shape of a basket, the way that you put the colors together. I do a lot with patterns. You can create patterns in two different ways, either by where you place the different colors, or by the way that you weave them. So this pattern, for example, all the weavers are dark and all the stakes are light. So this pattern is created by the way you weave it. Whereas this basket, the whole basket is woven just over and under. So the pattern is created by where you put the colors. I do both traditional and contemporary basket making. Traditional basket making, I work with reed, which comes from the rattan vine. This is a piece of rattan. It grows in hot places like Indonesia and China, and it's imported. Grows about a foot a day, and it's a very long vine. And the reed, which this material is reed, comes from the inside of the plant. There's all little holes in there, soaks up water quickly, becomes flexible so that you can weave with it. And then the outside of the material is cane, which everybody knows about, chair seats, which are sometimes made from cane, and that's the outside skin of the rattan. I also do contemporary basket making, working with paper. These baskets here are made from paper. It's 140-pound watercolor paper, rough press, that I paint with acrylics. I paint both sides of it and then cut it into strips using a pasta machine. So this is fettuccine. And then I weave the baskets using traditional basket making techniques. There's different kinds of basket making. Traditional, just over and under, is called plating. Then there's also different techniques that you would use with round reed. This is an example of round reed. It's called round reed because it's round. And there's a lot of twisting involved with that, and different sorts of patterns. You can create different textures by doing different techniques. Down here, I've just woven over 2 under 1 and to create like this swirl pattern. Then this here is some round reed. We had talked about that earlier. And then this is a different technique where you weave the pieces in diagonally. So it created like all this different texture, which is a lot of fun. Creates kind of a sampler. And then this basket, this is a little different too. These are called Cherokee Wheels. I'm going to assume that Cherokee baskets maybe use these wheels in them, but that's a fun technique where you go around to create this different kind of look.
It's very cool.
It is. It's time consuming, but it's pretty striking once you do it. There's also a shape that I like to use a lot. It's called a cat head shape, because if you look at it upside down, it looks like a cat's head. And to do this, you weave a square base, and then by manipulating the stakes, and using different pressure with the weavers, you create these little feet, and then it stands on its little feet. It's a really pretty shape, and it's also very strong. That's why I use it a lot with the paper, because paper by itself is not particularly strong. My creative process, I think a lot about what I want to do while I'm driving. So my creative process happens while I'm driving a lot of the time. Just kind of trying to put together different patterns and colors. Mostly besides when I'm driving, it really happens while I'm actually working with the basket. I might think I'm going to do one thing, and then the material tells me it does not want to do that. It wants to do something else. Because reed is a natural material. It has different, densities. This piece might be very dense, and this piece might not be very dense. And so they'll work differently. So when I'm weaving a particular basket, I check for the flexibility of the material before I use it. But even doing that, sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to do, and then we have to go in a different direction. So I guess my creative process is something that I do in coordination with the material itself. A lot of my baskets have a lot of shape to them. So it's a process of constantly checking what's happening to the shape. If you want your basket to have straight sides up and down, that's pretty simple. The sides are straight up and down. Or some people work on a mold. A lot of people will work on a mold, and then the shape is not the challenging part of a basket woven on a mold. But I tend to not weave on molds. So watching your shape, there's two things you can do. You can actually look at the shape of the basket as you're weaving it, or you can look at the relationship between the stakes. The stakes are the pieces that go up and down. So if a basket's going straight up and down, the stakes are all going to be parallel to each other and perpendicular to the base. But if you want your basket to be going out, then your stakes are going to not be parallel. All of them are going to be going out. If you want your basket to come in, they're going to be coming in. So you want to create an even symmetrical basket. You want the stakes to be doing the same thing all the way around the basket. So it's a lot of checking of your work as you're weaving. For working with paper, this is how the paper comes. It's 22 by 30 inches. It's heavy, like I said, it's 140 pound paper. And I get paint it with acrylic paints, which are all over here in this box, all different colors. Any color you want. If you don't have the color here, then you make new colors by mixing them. And then you kind of use a pasta machine. So this is really quite fun. There's different sizes of pasta, so it can come out different sizes. This is my hallway of reed. Different colors, natural. They're all different sizes, shapes, colors. And these are handles that sometimes I work into the baskets. These are just examples of different baskets people might make in class. So they're kind of class examples, give you inspiration. Or this is called a quatrefoil, which is a pattern that the Shakers use. They didn't all natural on natural. They didn't have colors like this, but that's a very traditional kind of pattern. You can do different things. You can weave diamonds into it, or you can do all different things with that basic pattern, which involves weaving over one or two or three, and depending on where you put those, they're called floats. Depending on where you put those floats will create the pattern. And then these are some of my paper baskets, and the weavers on this is 1 millimeter. So I think that's spaghetti that I cut to do these weavers. I have fingernails, and that's a really good tool when you're basket making with little tiny stuff. And this is an example. Again, it has the cat head shape, but you can see how I exaggerated it to create a contemporary type of basket. So that's what I meant by you can do all different things with this shape. The more extreme you make your shape, it is more challenging. So it's fun for me to see just how far I can push the material. And that pattern is created by both where you place the colors and how you weave it, whether you're going over 1 or 2 or 3 as you weave, it creates a pattern. In class, somebody will be doing something, we'll go, that's not a social basket. So there's a lot of baskets you can just, if it's just over and under, you can just kind of hang out and weave and have a lovely social event. But some baskets you can't do that with because you really have to be concentrating on what you're doing. You can also create ornaments with basket making materials. These star or snowflake shapes are very traditional design. People say they come from Scandinavia. I think they probably come from maybe Germany, that area originally. But I weave these with, this is thin strips of wood. This is cherry. This is maple, and this is black walnut. And then I also do it with the paper. And again, different colors. And I make little ones. And then there's also hearts, which are kind of fun. These are paper. I also make them in wood. This is cherry. The heart is more difficult because you're bending the wood further, and so it's easier to break it because it's very thin.
Yeah.
So you weave with it wet, but sometimes it still can break. So the hearts are actually, they are a lot harder than the stars. So this is a little bit different. This is a sculptural piece. I was just doing an experiment to see, again, how far could I push the paper and what could I make it do? That is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done, is trying to think that way, because most of my baskets are symmetrical, and that's what you're trying to do, is make it symmetrical. And this is the opposite of that. And so this was really hard for my brain. It was also technically hard, but it was hard for me as a basket maker to go in that direction. I don't think I necessarily have any influences. I don't know a tremendous amount about basket making history. Often when I'm demonstrating, the people who come and watch my demonstration will teach me things about history. They know more than I do. But I would say that I'm often inspired by my students. Like, they'll just come up with things that I would never do. I think they're very creative. And I find a lot of what they do very inspirational. Even like mistakes that people make, it's suddenly, that's like, oh my gosh, it's a mistake, but it looks great. And then we can incorporate it into a basket and it'll become a design element. I really enjoy working with the paper. Right now I've been doing that. Actually, I've been doing that for about 12 years now. And I love working with paper because you can get any color you want. When you dye material, when you dye reed, you don't really know what color it's going to come out to be. Or if you have a pot of material you're dyeing in, the first pieces are going to be darker than the later pieces. So it's really hard to control. Also, reed tends to fade in direct sunlight. So then you have to be careful where you put your baskets. But paper doesn't fade because it's painted with acrylics. You can get any color you want. You can, make your own colors. And if you don't like what you painted before you cut it, you just paint over it. So it's great. You can do all different things. So I can still do patterns with contrasting colors, but I also do a lot of work with creating different kind of looks like this that are a combination of colors, which is a lot of fun also. Well, the part I like the least is the rim on a reed basket. It can be physically difficult because it's heavier material, so it can be hard to work with. And it involves you're taking two thick pieces of material and making a circle out of them or a square, and the ends have to overlap, and you don't want to have a lot of bulk there, so you have to you shave down both pieces so that together they create the thickness of one piece of rim. And to do that, you need to use a knife, and I don't really like knives, so so that's my least favorite part, is to do that. But it's also maybe the most challenging part, to make a rim that's strong and beautiful and really fits together well. The part I like the most is the actual weaving of the basket. Starting the basket is, you know, it's not that much fun. You got to pick the materials, you got to look at it. It's most of it, when you're working with reed, it's a natural material, so there's flaws that you might or might not want. So you have to kind of evaluate all the pieces of material before you use them. And that's not that much fun. But once you start weaving the baskets, I would say, you know, the actual weaving, the base is boring, but then the weaving of the sides, that's where you get into your patterns and your shaping, and that's my favorite part. I told you I liked rocks, right? So these are rocks. They have to be a certain kind of rock. They have to have parallel sides. And then I wrap them with this technique, which is actually something that you can use on a handle of a basket. You can use this, but I do it here. It makes a nice keepsake, and people will give these as gifts. This is the League of NH Craftsmen gallery. There's 7 of them throughout the state. I actually own this gallery, and then I teach basket making and make my baskets in this space here. So my baskets are available in all of the League galleries, and mostly available here. Basket weaving, I started with a book. I made some baskets, but when you take classes, then you can really learn a lot, because you can visually see from examples that your teacher would give you, and you also learn from the other students in the class. I know I learn from my students all the time, so it's good to take classes. That's what I would suggest doing, is when the pandemic is over and we can have classes again, you can come here and take classes. But that's really the best thing to do to get started, because when you learn something new, you really learn it by making mistakes. And if you make mistakes in class, then your teacher can teach you how to fix them, and then you know how to weave, versus if you just get a pattern and you weave it, then you know how to follow directions, but you don't necessarily know how to weave. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. I've always been somebody who enjoyed making things. And when I found basketry, it was like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make baskets. It was just really clear cut and really hit me very hard. It's like, oh, I love to make baskets, and everything else kind of went by the wayside. For people who like to make things, it's really important to be able to create something. So although I don't know how much creativity there is in the basket making, but to actually make something, I think of myself more of an artisan than an artist. To make something with just the highest standards for techniques it's very fulfilling, and I don't know, I like it. Whenever I can't explain anything to one of my students, I say it's physics, and then they don't want to hear anymore, so I'll just say it's physics.
Thank you for joining our virtual Art Week. City Arts Nashua appreciates the support of our sponsors and you, our viewers. Please continue to support our local artists and our musicians and theater groups. For more information on arts in Nashua, please visit cityartsnashua.org.